about 20 minutes for a short discussion, but the event will continue on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in the frame of a workshop where you will meet the lecturers of today.
So, first of all, thank you very much for the chance to be here and to speak to you and inviting me. And unfortunately, Hans de Christ and Iris Dressler couldn't make it, so I talk about the project a little bit. Also, I was involved in developing and producing it. And I also would like to thank very much Kaiko and Setu for giving us this overview about their work. And I speak from a much more comfortable position, as you can imagine, coming from Germany. We are not getting killed by protesting, but anyhow, as we say in our region, we also have to clean first in our front doors before we put the finger on other people. So in my presentation, first I will give you an overview of the background of this section, the art of not being governed like that, which was part of the exhibition Redesigning the East, Political Designing Asia and Europe in the Württembergische Kunstverein. The Württembergische Kunstverein is an artist association. It's one of the biggest. In Germany it has over 3,000 members, so it's really a huge thing. And first I give you an overview of the background of this section, and second I will talk about this section itself. And from my perspective also, both projects show that artistic and cultural production can be an important and inspiring contribution to strengthen civil society and to participate in political change. Also, there's always a difference between the street and the white cube. But interplays between these two spaces are possible and are inspiring for both sides. Besides of the fact that a lot of contemporary artists and cultural producers directly participate in resistance movements. The story I will tell has no happy end, as you will see later, but at the end of the day, a lot of people are not the same as before. They experienced themselves and together with others new ways of non-alienation and political emancipation. From my perspective, and to follow the philosopher Herbert Marcuse, this is the function of contemporary art. Not to produce a beautiful appearance, but to critically reflect the non-fulfillment of promises like democracy, participation and justice in our today's and tomorrow's societies. After 3rd of September 2010, when police used water cannons, clubs and tear gas against a peaceful and approved demonstration by school children, youth and elder people who were protesting against the railway and real estate project Stuttgart 21, the directors of the Württembergische Kunstverein spontaneously decided to put up black flags in front of the building where the Württembergische Kunstverein is located. In the night of September the 30th, after over 300 people were injured, some of them seriously, over 20 old trees in the public park were cut under the protection of a huge crowd of policemen and women, as well as of local citizens protesting the whole night. The Württembergische Kunstverein was the only official institution in the city reacting. One reason might be that besides of the municipal administration, all the other art and cultural institutions, like, as you might know, the famous State Gallery, the opera and the various theaters funded by the government, already had got a letter by the local government mentioning that they are not allowed to take a stand about the project Stuttgart 1. In March 2011, the first time in the history of the state of Baden-Württemberg since the war, which means after 56 years of ongoing ruling conservatives, the conservatives were deselected and a guy from the Green Party became leader of a federal German state. And this was the first time in the history of the Federal Republic of Germany. So what has happened? As the traditional European centers of economical growth have to compete with new economical centers in Asia, Latin America and Africa, the European Union, including Great Britain, tries to attract capital investment by restructuring and modernizing European cities and by extending and accelerating traffic infrastructures. So they invited different programs, and one of them is called Trans-European Network number 17, and it goes from Paris to Bratislava. So we are always wondering who goes to Bratislava, but anyhow. The Deutsche Bahn AG, which is the German railroad company, is a municipal corporate body under private law, which means it is formally privatized in 1994, but not materially privatized, as the Federal Republic of Germany owns all stocks. So, for example, the Minister of Traffic of Germany can make a board meeting with himself, and it lasts only half an hour, because he can do it with himself. The Deutsche Bahn AG is the biggest railway corporation in whole Europe, with about 1,000 subsidiary companies. So the project Stuttgart 21, I explain later a little bit more, must be read first in the context of what the US geographer David Harvey calls a space-time compression. This means the acceleration of the transport of human workforce and of goods is a main factor to gain profit. Therefore, European traffic infrastructure is reconstructed by building more and better express highways for cars, by extension of air traffic, and by the development of railway high-speed connections as the so-called Trans-European Network. So, the Stuttgart 21 project has several parts. Actually, it's called Stuttgart-Ulm Rail Project, to have the precise title. One part of the project is Stuttgart 21, and this means to change the existing railhead station with 16 traces into a low-level railroad station with 8 traces. And you must know that the existing railhead station is one of the best functioning stations in whole Germany. Another part of the project is the building of a new railroad line between the city of Stuttgart and the airport, and a new fast trace between Stuttgart and the city of Ulm with 66 kilometers of tunnels, as this new trace will cross a low mountain range called Swabian Alps. So here you have the guys who participate in financing it, and also the project is called the New Heart of Europe, and it's because this whole project will be the biggest construction site in Europe if it will be realized. Here you can see, unfortunately my thing doesn't function here to show it. So here you can see these two parts. So you have this connection to the city of Ulm, and then Stuttgart 21 itself, it's the thing which is focused on the city. So in terms of the estimated and official costs, we are now at the sum of 4.5 billion for Stuttgart 21 alone, and 2.89 billion for the new trace between Stuttgart and Ulm. And as you can imagine, already during the years the amount of costs had to be corrected. Also until 2010 nothing has been built. Some corrections have been kept secret even before the parliament. The official calculation also cash costs, as for example the interest rates the city of Stuttgart is losing, because the city of Stuttgart bought a huge area of this Stuttgart 21 area. And also it is clear that the costs for the project will increase over the years, we know this. Yeah? The question is only how much. So some say even 10 billions of euros will cost the whole thing. So here you can see this impressive image about the new main station building. On the left side, very shiny. On the right side, this smaller image, you can see the main station, the two wings of the main station are teared down, and then also all the trees will cut off, and we have these nice pissoirs, these glass pissoirs, instead of almost over 200 of existing trees which are standing in this part of the park and which are already started to be teared down. So here you have another image. You can see this main station with still this huge wing on the side, and it's also a station which is under UNESCO protection, but this doesn't play any role anymore. And then you have this huge Schlossgarten, this park, which goes much further through the city. It's only a part.
Why is it UNESCO protection? What is it?
Because of the building. This architecture is the guy who built this was Paul Bonatz, and he's a famous, relatively famous German architect from the early 20th century. So it's a building which is a little bit in between, how can I say, modernism, yeah, and classicism, but also he took some references from Islamic mosque from Turkey. So it's a special building. So UNESCO said it's under preservation. So here you can see they want to move it and then put it underground. But that's not all, yeah, what they want to do. Here you can have a closer look how the thing will look like or should look like in the future. And here you have an inner view, very shiny and modernized. But there are a lot of details I don't want to I cannot go into every detail, but for example the platforms will have over 2.5 degrees, so if you bring your luggage and unfortunately put your hand away and the luggage will go down. So
this is good, right?
And here you see that it's not, the whole thing is not only about this station, but the background of the whole thing, that it is also a huge urban development project, because over 100 hectares will be available for urban development. And a part of these areas, which you can see on the area of 8.1, in the beginning, this is the Baden-Württemberg Bank, which is also almost corrupted, but they have already started here to build. So, and the background also is that since a while we can observe a massive capital investment in real estate projects all around the globe. And today, urban policy and urban development is following the demands of capital owners, investors and shareholders only. In terms of urban development, this causes what I want to call a homogenization by economization. in most of today's European cities, one can discover the same architecture and architectural styles, the same chain of stores and shopping malls, business and administration centers, recreation and entertainment areas, as well as spectacular buildings for the high art and culture, like museums, art galleries, to attract consumers and business people. But furthermore, the production of urban spaces takes place not only in the frame of capital investment and real estate market, but as well in the notion of the politics of so-called neoliberalism. And to shortly summarize neoliberalism, it's a liberation of financial markets, deregulation, that is to say a reduction of juridical barriers in favor of market and business, and especially in terms of urban development, a privatization of public services, tax cuts for business ventures, reduction of maximum income tax, shortcuts, and cancellation of governmental benefits, plus disempowerment of labor unions and other similar organizations. Additionally, and under the label of the so-called new governance established in the frame of the so-called Lisbon strategy of the European Union, which was started already in 2000, new policies are introduced and European, national and local governmental institutions have been restructured and public services are being economized. So at the end of the day, the message is to economize the whole city, the whole society, every field of society, even education, schools, and so on. As a consequence, cities and municipalities also are thus submitting to the logic of the market. The city is becoming a city corporation, and this is not a left-wing term, it's the official title, meanwhile, of a lot of European cities, because most of the services are now privatized. So the city is a city corporation. As all these public services are formally or materially privatized, and also the local administration itself is restructured, following the principles and criteria of managerial business only. And this is really seriously, because the consequences of all these politics are, first of all, more corruption, a massive loss of democratic participation, an intensification of already existing borders between minorities and majorities, the development of what we call in social sciences two-thirds society, and the loss of access to resources like education, art and culture. And finally, an intensifying decline of living conditions. So for example, the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu notes that the neoliberal discourse is not just one discourse among many, but what he calls a strong discourse. And that this movement toward the neoliberal utopia, how he calls it, is a project which aims to create the conditions under which the theory can be realized and can function. And he calls it a program of the methodological destruction of collectives. In a wider frame, this politics can be summarized by the term governmentality, as Foucault, the French philosopher, already argued end of 1970s. He stated in one of his lectures in 1978, I quote, "By governmentality I understand the entity formed by the institutions, the proceedings, analysis and reflections, the calculations and the tactics, permitting to administrate this quite specific and still complex mode of power, which has as a main target the population, as main science the political economy, and as the main technical instrument the dispositives of security." And what this means we will see later. This term was also a starting point for our section, the art not being governed like that. And it's a quote by Michel Foucault. So before I go a little bit more into this section, I just very quickly want to give you an overview about the resistance movement. So this is still part of this new construction site. And also this is very comfortable, this zero corner. Since the official presentation of the project in 1994, people protested against this mega project, and the history of this project is as long as the history of the project itself. Especially in the city of Stuttgart, people became active from the beginning, but a lot of people, because there was a lot of political and economical things going on, so at the end of the day people thought this project will never be realized. But in 1994 the project was announced, and then at a certain point in 2007 the protests reached a bigger dimension, because 60,000 inhabitants of the almost 600,000 inhabitants of the city of Stuttgart signed an application of a petition of a referendum. But the mayor and the council refused a petition of referendum about this project. In 2009, the agreement relating to the financing finally was signed by the officials, and in February 2010, the symbolic start of the project was celebrated, accompanied by massive protests. And to give you, before I show you quickly the slides about the movement, I just want to give you a few reasons why the citizens protested. So first of all, the costs of the project. Second, the building, demolition of the train station. Because it's, as I mentioned, normally under preservation, but because we have this deregulation of a lot of laws concerning preservation, the Deutsche Bahn AG could get an exception. Then third, the demolition of parts of the inner city park and the planned cuts of over 300 trees of various types, a lot of them over 200 years old. And you also must know that the city of Stuttgart is situated in a sinkhole, so we have very bad air. Yeah, because this area, it's the southern part of Germany. It's the capital is concentrated. Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, Bosch, yeah, all these huge companies have their headquarters there. It's highly industrialized. So and we are very fans of having cars all the time in our city, for sure, because Mercedes-Benz, as you might know, or now it's called Daimler-Benz, I'm sorry, I'm still old-fashioned, has its headquarters there. So another reason was the danger to demolish the mineral water sources. So I can say Stuttgart is the city which has, after Budapest, the second biggest resource of mineral water and resources. So about 250 areas where mineral water comes out, and also in this park area there is a lot of groundwater and as well mineral water. Then another reason was the complicated geology. As it is a sinkhole, that they have to build tunnels to go up to the airport and so on, and there's also a layer of plaster in this geology, so you can imagine what might be happening if water comes in and so on. Then the narrowness of the tunnels and so on, and the fact that the Deutsche Bahn AG, as a formally privatized company, and this is main issue, does not put all facts on the table, yeah, because you cannot force, even if it's materially under governmental control, but you cannot force a privatized company to show you what kind of contracts they are doing. Yeah, I mean, you cannot force them, so they can absolutely hide everything from the public or from the parliament and so on. The fact that this project is based on a lot of exemptions, like for example, as I mentioned, the monument conservation and so on. The fact that only not all parts of the planning approvals are terminated until now, and that parts of the project are still unclear and not yet finished, and finally, and this is also a big thing, that the people do not like to be governed like that, as from the beginning of this project there was, as the official said, no alternative. So, and this is really something which you should never accept if politicians come to you and say there is no alternative. So you have to accept what they are planning. So, and finally, no real and mandatory participation of the citizens took place. So the enforcement of this project goes hand in hand with deregulation, perversion of justice, lies and promises, lobbyism, camouflage, public manipulation by the media and the politics, as well as criminalization of the opponents in form of surveillance by the police, house searches and convictions. So now I give you this promised overview. So there's still an alliance of action. So various organizations like environmental organizations, associations and initiatives, initiatives about traffic and so on, formed an alliance of action in 1995, and they initiated, and so they also mentioned there is an alternative to Stuttgart 21, and the alternative is to keep this railhead station and to modernize it. Yeah, because it costs much less money, you don't have to cut the trees and so on. So, and here you can see a few working groups against, which came out absolutely from the civil society. So, for example, jurists, businessmen, psychologists, social workers, artists, architects, engineers, seniors, gardeners, yeah, they all formed groups to protest against this Stuttgart 21. So there is a lot of self-organized and groups came up. So first of all, what they installed was a so-called Mondays demonstrations, and now we have the 113th demonstration on February 27th. So it took more time. I mean, the wall, it doesn't took so long to tear it down. Yeah. So, but we'll see. So, and the thing was that these Monday demonstrations became a social event, and people experienced the joy of being on the street and meeting each other, and to meet known and foreign people, to talk to each other, instead of sitting still ongoing in front of the TV on the couch. So what they also installed, it was an idea by a theater director and an actor. They installed what they called Swabian trick. So this means daily, loud and everywhere, to yell 60 seconds. Then there was a hoarding, meanwhile 2 versions at the North Wing before it was teared down. So the Deutsche Bahn put here this thing, and then people put a lot of comments and everything on this hoarding. And then the North Wing was teared down, and then the material comes to the Museum of History, but then people again started to put things on this hoarding. So you have some impression. So what they also did was to install a permanent picket, which is still ongoing 24 hours since July 2010. So there's always people in this picket. Then a lot of mass rallies took place after the Black Thursday with almost 100,000 protesters. Now it's around, it's less bigger, as you can imagine. Then to give you an impression who participated, and there came out at a certain point in the media this term of rage citizens, which is really a stupid term, because the movement is very diverse. So you have men, women, homosexuals, trans people, working class people, bourgeois, homeless people, migrants, young and old people, and all these participants mirror the diverse structure of the city of Stuttgart. We have a higher rate of people with migrant background than, for example, Berlin, yeah, because it's this industrial area. So it's really stupid, this term of the rage citizens, but so you have also handicapped people, because for them it's more comfortable to go on one level into a railhead station than to go underground, as you can imagine. So they also built up a group, a protest group. So even such guys. Then they founded what was called by Abrissaufstand a demolition uprising. So this was also an online thing, and they initiated so-called action weeks. So every week, now it's the 80s one, they made, yeah, you already can see how many groups are meeting, and they made lectures and screenings and discussions and meetings, presentations. Also they installed what they call action conference. So, and some of them also took place in the Württembergische Kunstverein. Then this demolition uprising was connected to this initiative to protect the park, and they have been occupying the park with tents. For example, you can see here. Even they stayed there in winter. Then also there were activities under the label of civil disobedience, but it was clear there was a consensus about non-violence. So, for example, they occupied, this was the north wing, it's already teared down. And then this is the south wing, they occupied it. Then here you can see blockades here by businessmen against Stuttgart 21. So even, yeah, the police has to come and pick them away, and in the beginning it costs 40 euros, and now we have to pay 120 euros, yeah, if the police carries you away. And here you also have a women's blockade. Then another issue was, and we labeled it infopolitics. So what was ongoing was that we were under surveillance by the police, so they all the time filmed us. And then, but on the other hand, we filmed them too. So, and what came out, and then a lot of buttons, posters, even independent newspaper, because we realized that the official media, they were manipulated. So people founded this newspaper, they made bags. K21 means this, keeping this railhead station. And then at a certain point, people started to observe the construction site with a little observation camera to realize when the police is, when they start to tear it down. And from this simple observation camera, a whole TV, kind of internet TV came out, which is called Flügel TV. So these guys have now an extensive archive on the web about all these activities and lectures and so on. And also, what I forgot to say, in these Monday demonstrations, people always, I mean, there was always culture included, music and also experts were talking about different angles of this project. So over the time the people get very well educated and educated also themselves about the whole thing. So and another initiative was CAMS 21. So look at this guy, he became more and more elaborated. So now he drives with a bike, has 4 cameras and a computer with him, and what he does is he makes live streaming, so from protests or actions and so on. And also these guys helped the Spanish Revolution to make a cam for the Spanish Revolution. So, as I already mentioned, arts and culture have been a very important thing. Here you see some action. Also 2 music bands were founded, because music is very important when you make a demonstration. Because the people enjoy it more, yeah? And you have more fun, and it gives you a more better feeling of coming together. Then an artist group of Stuttgart, I also participated. We constructed this, what we call our pavilion, to offer an independent open space to make exhibitions, so that people can come and meet and so on. We put it illegally into the park, in reference to this already existing public art sculpture. So, yeah. And then also single artists participate. And then what came out from all this protest was that there was a conciliation in 2010, because at a certain point the Deutsche Bahn AG and the politicians said, yeah, okay, now we got it, you want to participate, okay, we make a round, we talk to you, yeah. So this was in the city hall, so experts from the Deutsche Bahn AG and experts from the opponents and politicians came to one table and talked 8 times. And this was also broadcasted in the German TV, and which was a big success, because this never happened before in the history of Germany. So, and this guy was the moderator, Heiner Geisler, conservative politician, and he became very famous again by this event. But as you can see, I don't go too much into detail. This was the comment of the resistance movement about this thing. Its motto was all facts under the table and not on the table. So now I come to the section.
You have time.
Yeah, okay, I go very fast. So this I already mentioned, this governmentality. So our starting point was these topics: governmentality, economization, civil society, information policy, and lobbyism. So the main question also was, who has a right to the city? So what we did, we did the whole thing in 3 weeks. We had no extra money, so we had to follow. It's not about aesthetics at the end of the day. It's also not an artistic project in this sense, but it's more a kind of homage to this resistance movement. So here you can see the Württembergische Kunstverein. And then what we did, we offered the people research of a lot of text, so people can copy them and take them away in a CD. So information about all these areas I mentioned before. Then we had display cabinets with flyers and so on to make visible that this, because in public media it was often said, yeah, why do you come now when everything already is on the road and so on. So we wanted to show that there was a resistance movement from the very beginning. I guess book. Then what I mainly did was to make a timeline, also including the resistance movement. So here you have, and people enjoyed it, I guess. And then also we had a billboard, people could write on it, and this was the whole thing. So governmentality. These are images by No Sun Tak, a Korean photographer who already had an exhibition in the Württembergische Kunstverein and who came back and took these images. And it nicely shows the diversity of people participating. And also we had Dan Paljovi who made these drawings. People could take away and to use it also to spray it on the wall. So this is a detail here. Stefan and Sylvia, they made this kind of showing who is all involved in this project and how they are connected, so you can see it's a real mafia. So then another section was about urban development. So this was Hans' favorite sentence: when it comes to investing, a little knowledge is fatal. And this was our favorite image. Yeah? On the left side you see a shiny design, architectural design of this new public library, which the mayor initiated to show that something is going on this area. And on the right side you see how it looks like when it is realized. So then also important thing, democracy for sure. And then also we mentioned a few terms as showing an alternative, cooperative urban development, social mixture, spatial heterogeneity, collective gardening, inclusion instead of exclusion, another city for another life, right to the city, social city, and so on. Yeah, we could make a workshop out of that. Then civil society was our little homage. And then information politics. Here you could see what you already saw. And then the section about the escalation, and the hands you can see on the left side are the hands of Angela Merkel, because after she said, we cannot allow in Germany that such a project like Stuttgart 21 is skipped by the street. Yeah, we cannot allow this. Because if we allow this, then we never can do such a thing in Germany anymore. And this sentence or this notion was the green light for the former president of Baden-Württemberg to send the police and to attack this demonstration. So this was a nice comment by Dan Paljovi. So then we also had workshops in connecting to this project, film screenings, this action conference. This was one working group. This was in this other section, Redesigning the East. Then some images about the public. And then there was this election I already mentioned. And after that we also made another thing, we made Campus Stadt. So we invited, under the label of Right to the City, Urban Economies and Urban Visual Politics, we invited, we initiated lectures. Here, this is Hans de Christ. And again, we made workshops. And then finally, we have been invited by Jaroslav Anders to the Docks, which is a contemporary art space in Prague, because they have the same thing in a certain way. Under Prague, there will be, or already started to build autobahn, car, tunnel thing, yeah, and on the right thing you can already see what happened. And the funny thing is, it's in front of the cultural ministry. They got a huge role suddenly. So these are some images. So we reworked it, the whole thing. And they made really a nice furniture for us display. So I come to the end. It's ongoing, the whole thing. So at one time it wasn't non-violent anymore, because on one Monday 1,000 people decided to go on this construction site where they already started to or had built a technical building for the groundwater management, because they had to put out, before they can do anything, they have to put out all the water from the park, from the underground. And it already came out, they have to do it, it doubled, yeah? It's I think 8 billion liter of water, yeah, they have to put out. So this, later it came out that this building already was illegally built. So anyhow, at June 20th, 1,000 people pushed down the fence and went into the construction site and occupied it and demolished one truck. And then finally, as the government changed in Baden-Württemberg, the new government, which was a coalition by Social Democrats and the Green Party, decided, okay, we let the people of Baden-Württemberg decide if they agree to a law that if the cost of 4.5 billion are topped, that the state of Baden-Württemberg can go out of this contract with the Deutsche Bahn. So a very complicated question, yeah? And maybe I can formulate it a little bit better. So the problem was also that there was a barrier of quotes you have to reach, but anyhow. So this was what came out, unfortunately. So the yes is the green one, and the no, the ones who want to have Stuttgart 21 have been in the majority. But the problem was that that it was a fight from David against Goliath in a certain way, because to force the public consensus, the official protagonists of the region of Stuttgart used €1 million of public money to start an advertised campaign, a very stupid one, mentioning, for example, that an exit out of the project by the government would cost €1 billion, yeah? But this number was never really verified. So finally, David, our resistance movement, failed, and this movement was organized without any public money and lost against Goliath. For the resistance movement, the result was a certain disaster, especially in the city of Stuttgart, as you can imagine. The hegemony, as the Italian theorist Antonio Gramsci defined it, hegemony is consensus plus enforcement, could be realized in favor to the operators of the project Stuttgart 1. So the logical consequence of this referendum was the clearing of the park this year in February. So this was the night before the clearing, so people occupied still this park, and then around 3,000 policemen came and removed everything, and this was the next morning. So, and they started to tear down everything. Even this whole project is not accomplished in terms of the plans and so on, but they wanted to show their power at the end of the day. So this is how it looks today. So the media gave up to discuss the project from this time on, and the politicians forget their promises about introducing a real participation of citizens concerning big urban planning and infrastructure projects. The inhabitants of Stuttgart will be left with a huge, senseless construction site as an unfulfilled promise of modernization and sustainability. So finally, Stuttgart 21 is a good example of democracy unrealized, even if it is updated by a referendum based on unequal conditions. It is an example how political and economical elites accomplish to install a form of neoliberal governmentality and hegemony serving their interests only. But more and more people are wakening and standing up, as we can observe it already now all over the globe. And if we look at the current and future situations concerning environmental, social, economical and political issues, it becomes obvious that changes are necessary. The resistance movement against Stuttgart 21 is one milestone in a long row of fights about a better, more reasonable, democratic, equal and sustainable society. And I think this will go on. So thank you very much.
And now it's the audience turn to ask their questions.
It's not so promising start for workshop.
Just the opposite, because on the workshop, everyone has the opportunity to go into the details and broaden the discussion or suggest different ways. It was a sort of simple and quick illustration of the way of thinking we would like to run this workshop on.
So for the participant of the workshop, probably you noticed that the political design is a part of tactical media activism. So I'm usually specializing in more using of another media, like such as video, online media, and so on. But this kind of graphic design, printing media is also a very important part of it. And for example, presentations such as thesis presentation shows us that media activism is not only about you creating, you're producing something for your activism, for your campaign, but also monitoring. So monitoring is a very important part of it. So, for example, in Hungary, I'm aware that the government is using very much map. So the map is a tool for them to show the greater Hungary and so on, and Transylvania, and so this kind of use of the map or this kind of use of any diagram or anything, I encourage you to monitor it. So this is a very, very important part of the activism, media activism, before you produce it or as you produce your things. Yeah? So monitor and then production. So this has to go parallel.
Okay, so we still have 1.5 days to collect some questions before the Monday session starts at 3 o'clock.
And also please, maybe you are a little bit too shy now in the public setting to give a question. But please correct your thought, idea, and reflections and from what you see, what you saw today. And then please tell us, please present us on Monday. And then this is the start of our discussion.